Hey everybody, this is Perch, and well, as you can kind of tell if you've been listening along, I am trying to tune the format a little bit. I really appreciate all the feedback, suggestions people have given me. I mean, obviously, it's kind of I'm stuck in a weird middle point where I don't know what I'm doing, bluntly, in terms of making these little videos, putting it in. I'm using probably the worst tools in the world. I don't know what everybody else uses, but I'm hacking these little videos together, trying to adjust the sound, trying to adjust all those other pieces, but trying to tune the opening so we can get to the point a little bit better, reduce the noise of the intro, and just kind of get it to where it needs to be. But it's one of those things where I'm not out here to try and get a million subscribers and monetized and all the rest. So I'm not the biggest hitch, why it took so long to get this channel up is because I was really kind of anal retentive. It has to look the right way, sound the right way, do the right thing, and eventually I get to or I can just start putting up streams and call it a day, and take that first step and tune as I go. On the other hand, I am a perfectionist, so I do like things to be done well and put out nicely, and I don't typically go back and listen to this stuff later because it's like, my voice sucks, and the timing, it would be so much better if I wrote a script and did all that. But then if I did that, I'd never get to it. So again, I just thank you for all the tips and suggestions and feedback and everything else on this channel. And today, kind of along that lines, kind of going back to kind of making comics and getting comics into stores. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the demon of perfection, and how you can have a great idea for a comic or a story that you want to tell, and you can sit on that idea for months or years to the point that you never actually get it out into the world. And so you see this advice come up from time to time of, don't wait for it to be perfect. Just start moving, start going. And I think that really applies to comics and creators and people who have ideas. The people who win are the people who just go. Even when they're not ready, they just get going. And it's a hard lesson to learn. It's one of those things where, especially online with social media, you get criticism really quickly, and pretty brutally as well. People are not kind when it comes to giving really thoughtful feedback and criticism. It tends to be off the cuff. There's a people are rewarded often for being more cruel or more cutting with their comments, more edgy, and so there's this kind of this natural gravity for people to want to be more destructive in their comments. That tends to get more attention and more likes, and on it goes. So it can be intimidating for a creator who's going to come out and put out work and have it just torn to shreds in the first 48 hours. You gotta, be humble. It's definitely separates the people who are ready for it and not. If you put something out and it gets ripped, and then you kind of go off on a bender and just start flaming everybody. I mean, this is pretty common in indie people and pros alike. And anybody. It's hard to have your work crapped on, and you have to be a little bit smarter than the rest of the game. You have to kind of take that criticism tongue in cheek. You have to recognize that some of the people who are giving that criticism are doing it just to get attention, and so the last thing you want to do is feed that with more kind of vitriol and anger that's just going to perpetuate that cycle. It's best to just be like, okay, let it roll off your back, keep going. Because I think that's the lesson for everybody who's a creator of any kind, is just keep going. It's hard for people to tear you down when you just put one foot in front of the other every single day and make progress. And I think where comics are concerned and creativity is concerned, that's even work that you don't like, maybe as a reader or as a fan. There's something to be said for somebody who just keeps going. The flaw of a lot of comics and storylines and creators in a lot of cases is that they put out kind of a half-baked story or idea, and they don't build upon it. They let the criticism kind of get to their head, and they start online feuds, and then issues get late, and storylines never go anywhere. And it doesn't matter. When John Byrne started Fantastic Four, there was a reasonable amount of criticism of his take, that it was the wrong Fantastic Four. This wasn't the classic family that we knew of, and it just it wasn't any good. But even the people who disliked Burns' run, and they're it's talked about. I reference Byrne a lot because I think a lot of people with short memories kind of have this idealistic view of what John Byrne did on the title, and they forget that there were plenty of people who didn't like the work, who thought it was just plain wrong, and Byrne would go online and just ream people. And I mean, there was obviously not online during his Fantastic Four run, but later in his life. And he was a controversial figure, but he's not on Twitter slugging it out every day, so you don't really think of him as a controversial figure. But he kept going, and so even people who hated that run can look back and go, that was a pretty legendary multi-year run, and you get a lot of respect for somebody who tells a big story. Even if you don't like the story, the commitment is worth respecting. And I think a lot of current comics will age that way. Whether it's actually, I'll give you a much more recent example. There were plenty of naysayers to the Jason era run on Thor, where Jane Foster became Thor. And in the grand scheme of things, Jane Foster was Thor for 2 to 3 years, kind of in that time. I mean, a drop in the bucket, honestly. Like almost the amount of time it took Ultimates to come out, 12 issues. Uh, Not in terms of delays and everything else, not quite that long, but still, it's not a very long run. A lot of people were pretty, not a lot of people, because it's so. I mean, the reality is in the store, the Jane Foster as Thor run sold quite well. It was a good seller. It was consistent month after month. It didn't lose big readership in issue number 3, issue number 4. It held its ground, but I think people look back on it today, even people who are big haters of the run, and they can still at least admit, maybe grudgingly, that there was some commitment there. It was a run. It told a complete story. It had kind of a beginning, middle, and end to it, and obviously it was part of a bigger kind of mythology in Thor. And but they can say, hey, there was an artist that was pretty consistent. There was a story that was pretty consistent, and it wasn't interrupted by a million and one tie-ins. And there was something to that run. And I think that's valuable. And so it gets back to, if you're a creator and you have an idea, put it out there and start building upon it. Refine it as you go. If you have an idea for a comic, go get it out. Whether it's a web comic, or you do an Indiegogo, or you just put panels into Twitter. Find some way to get that idea of yours out into the world, and then take another step forward and continue your story and do more and adjust to the feedback that you think is relevant, and ignore the feedback you think is poor, and don't put your mind and your soul into it. Just keep moving forward, and before you know it, you'll have a nice long run, or a collection of things for yourself. And that's power. That's a body of work. And given the fact that the vast majority, I don't know, 95% of people just talk themselves out of ever starting, puts you in a pretty elite group of people who are actually, throwing something out there, producing, giving us content. I've said on an earlier channel, the way the internet is and the way that media is right now, we're desperate for content. We need more and more and more of it to consume. So there's a market. Your idea, there is a market. There are readers. There are people who will do it. And maybe you put it out there and 5 people read it today. But take another step, and it will be 10 people tomorrow, and it'll be 50 people the day after that. And you build an audience. And before you know it, you're strong. And take pride in every step you take. That's my little rah-rah of the day. So short little bit. I guess these videos do better if they're around 10 minutes. That's kind of some of the feedback I get of what people want to listen to, and kind of the amount of time they want to devote to it. So I'll try and keep it a little shorter. I ramble on. It's me, no surprises there. If you like it, hey, subscribe, notify, follow on Twitter. You know the drill. Thank you. And as always, have a great day.